I am so thrilled and honored to be here today with Roland Comtois. Roland's a nationally acclaimed inspirational channel and speaker, radio host, and author of 2 books. And Then There Was Heaven, a memoir chronicling Roland's personal near-death experience and the afterlife insights that define his life today. And his most recent book, 16 Minutes, Roland's personal journey with his beloved mother that serves as a guidebook through grief. Roland's a professional healer with over 30 years experience as a gerontology nurse, Reiki master, spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, and grief specialist. He sure does it all. His mission is to help people find comfort in life in spite of loss, show them how to move beyond grief with love and hope, and to pass on the message that heaven and eternal love are real and always close to hand. There is no end to the work Roland does to bring that light of everlasting love to us. To be in the presence of Roland and his purple papers is one of the most humbling, beautiful experiences of my life. These signature purple papers carry messages of love, hope, and undeniable information that lets you know the soul and love is everlasting. I have witnessed at my center over and over this undeniable truth. These messages are waiting and dated long before the recipients have come to see Roland. There's no doubt the angels have chosen Roland to deliver the message that we are and always will be connected. Welcome, Roland. What I've always wanted to ask you, and now I will, is your most recent book, 16 Minutes, which is the last 16 minutes of your beloved mother's life.
Yes.
And you, more than anyone else, knows that the soul is everlasting and it's forever. How did you and how do you deal with this?
Well, interestingly enough, people came up to me and said that they thought I shouldn't cry because I understand that love is everlasting. But I was a 50-year-old kid that lost the one person who understood me, who knew me from the beginning to the end and everything else in between. And so I had to learn, as everyone else has to learn, how to navigate life differently when someone you love passes away. So for me, it was an intense, emotional, extraordinary journey of self-discovery, of accepting that this is life as it is now, and then opening myself up to the possibilities of her sending me messages, and I certainly articulate that in the book.
So you've received messages from her?
Yes, I've received lots of messages from her now.
And so for people that are not able to do that, can we talk about how we can open ourselves up to signs and to being connected with our departed loved ones?
Well, I am convinced, Barbara, that every person has the opportunity to receive a message. It does require focus and attention. It requires kind of getting into that quiet space. And when you do, and you allow that experience to happen, I think then, and only then, you'll start to feel the presence. You'll start to feel the connection of someone that you loved. And it's within all of us to do this. One of the things that I tell everybody, you don't need the middleman to get a message from the people that you love. You don't need to seek out someone like me to hear the story because they love you. They want to communicate with you. And until you build up that confidence, then guys like me will help you see that love is everlasting.
But to get, and I've sat in so many of your workshops, to get the messages and the details, it's hard for us mere mortals to do that. And signs, like how do we look for signs? How could you guide us a little bit more?
I think the signs, first you have to do is ask. Ask for a sign. Be prepared to see what that sign is. It could be a butterfly, it could be a dream, it could be this amazing feeling inside that you're okay and you attribute that to the person that you're missing or longing for. I always tell everyone I meet the way to make the first connection or get the first message is to ask the question. So ask. Ask a question. I say, Mom, I need a sign today or something.
Just like that.
Just like that. I have a dialogue with her in my head, in my heart, that's just like us sitting here having this conversation. So I say, I'd like a sign today.
And how do you know that sign is not your mind?
Well, this is a great question because, many people say to me, are you sure it's not just wishful thinking? I miss my son so badly. Are you sure I didn't make that up? Well, the question is, how did you feel when that moment came?
It's a feeling. It's a heart opening.
It's a heart opening.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you received that message that changed you in some way? I bet you felt a little bit better. I bet you felt a little bit at ease in some way. So when a message comes from our loved ones, from that spiritual place, it really is this moment of absolute peace. And then, you know what happens, right? We start thinking.
Right.
We begin a big negotiation within ourselves, but in fact, that first moment is one of peace. It's one of remembering the love and remembering the connections that we have with each other. And we need to
be still for that. Because we're all rushing around so much, we can't access that unless we're quiet.
No, I would designate, what I do is I designate time. So I sit quietly, meditate, pray, whatever the word is, and whatever I do, and then I just allow myself to receive whatever messages I am meant to hear.
Receive, that's a really important word. Now, I've been in the room with you, and you stay in your hotel room, and you pray, and you write in advance. I'd love to show these amazing messages on these purple papers that I love, and they're written years before. There are some that you still have from, what's the earliest message?
The earliest one is 2005.
2005. Now, you never know who's coming, because I've run these. And yet you receive these messages and you don't know who they're intended for.
No.
And time after time, and I have witnessed as I look at these people's faces, they know their departed loved ones are speaking to them.
The truth is, it leaves me breathless. That's how powerful that spiritual moment is. I remember standing in front of a woman and I read a paper that was from someone named Steve, and she went white. She said, about 3 hours before the event, she said, "Steve, just send me one little tiny sign." And there was a purple paper that depicted his story, his journey. And I get emotional about these things because what happens is that at that precise moment, there is the continuity of love is remembered. That she was able to go to a place within herself and say, okay, Steve's okay, I'm okay, we're okay, and is able to take another step in her life.
I've seen time after time these messages give people the hope and the courage to keep going, that they know that connection has not been broken,
right,
and that there's more to life than just what we see,
right,
and that's it's so important. So when you're receiving all these messages, what does it feel like to be Roland?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me give you an example of what it feels like. Have you ever been at the mall at Christmas time? It's December 24th, it's 4:59 p.m. and the mall is going to close. But you just remembered you forgot to get someone a gift. So you rush to the mall, you hear the person ringing the Salvation Army bell, you hear kids yelling and screaming, you feel the hustle and bustle of what that experience is like, and you rush down there because you know you've got to do this one thing, and everything is causing you all kinds of commotion trying to get there. That's what it feels like. There's this, I want to say insane and intense energy that moves right through me prior to getting that message. It feels like the whole room is full of people and everybody's talking and everybody wants to say something and everybody wants to share their story. So it's this whole feeling that everybody is present in this one moment of time.
Is it hard to navigate? Do you become overwhelmed? Is it hard to you always seem actually fine. Sometimes you're funny because you'll say, all right already, can you tell her to stop? We got to let some other people share.
Well, sometimes it is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's sad when you hear the story and you see the pictures in your mind or your heart. So you work through that experience, but it's loud, it's intense, it's energized, it's loving. It's all of those things at one moment of time.
That's so incredible. And I know people ask you, the messages always seem to be positive. And what's your response to that?
Well, I ask for positive messages.
Right.
I said,
Okay.
don't give me the bad news. Let me be the channeler of messages that are supportive and loving and kind and healing and generous.
And they're so in depth. It's about look in the drawer and you'll find the ring,
Yeah.
or Daddy, the angels took me and you didn't know that she was suddenly taken from this life. It's just message upon messages that are recorded. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's so humbling to be in the presence of what I just think of as love and angels. That's really
And that's
what
what
it
they're
is.
trying to say. They're trying to say in these messages that I live on. You know, I have never, in the 40-something years that I've been having these conversations, I've never heard anyone say to me, a spirit say to me, give them the bad news. Tell them to be depressed. Tell them not to get out of bed anymore. Tell them not to eat anymore. You know, they don't tell us those things, at least not from my perspective. They say that they are healing, that they are healed, that they are loved, that they remember love, that they are determined to get us signs and messages as we begin to receive them through our grieving experience.
And you're not the only one. Doreen Virtue, who speaks with the angels, echoes everything that you're saying. That ultimately, everything is really about love. We just experience things here
It
a
is
little
about
differently.
love.
And you take your work, I mean, you're so dedicated. There's a grief conference that you do
Yes.
yearly, and you have services on your website that you provide to people to help them navigate through this. And what are the things that are the closest to your heart that you want people to know about that will help them?
Well, when it comes to this experience of getting a message, I want you to trust yourself. I really want you to believe that it's possible, and that when you get that very first message, Barbara, you're going on a new journey of receiving multiple messages that are going to transform you, that are going to take you from your grief to peace. And I am all about doing anything and everything I can to help someone have 1 second of peace. There's nothing that I can do here that will take their grief away, but what I can do is demonstrate that the possibility of love is everlasting, and through an effort, a creation of a plan, you will be able to get those signs and messages yourself.
Can I ask you what is the most incredible, or the story that has touched your heart the most? Does something come to mind?
Yeah,
with the
there is.
papers?
There is something. I was in Jane, New York, and I was doing an event, and there were 35 or 40 people in the room, and there were a small family in the back room. They didn't really want to be seen, but they were there, and they were present. It was a mother and her 2 children. And as I was beginning to present, I saw that young boy sitting there, and something pulled me right towards him. And as I walked to him, I said, your father wants you to know something. And I began to give him this story. And this 17-year-old kid started to cry. He was hesitant in showing his emotion, but he started to cry. And I told him the story of how his father passed away, and realized that there was a purple paper pre-recorded about 7 months prior to our meeting. And it was about his father who had passed in a bus accident. And the young kid just changed. He became free at some point. 1 year later, I'm sitting at my office, I get a letter, and the letter is from a family member of this young kid. They had written me to tell me that that boy on that day, his life changed. That somewhere inside of him, he became free. They told me that he was getting good grades in school. They told me that he was having a happier life. They told me that he was walking from his sadness. And they told me that he was believing that his father was still part of him. I'll never forget that kid. I'll never forget him.
That's what you do. Again, having witnessed people coming here all the time, they walk out and they're renewed. They have a second chance, they feel, on approaching life and to connect with their loved ones.
Yeah.
And your mother's been gone for how long now?
2 years.
So during these 2 years, what has shifted for you? Do you feel the time has eased part of the ache, or is it just also the ability to have the ongoing connection, or both?
I don't give time any credit here. I give remembering the love. Okay. And like in my mind, I go to the places that were fun and joyful, and I think, oh, good, I feel good about that, and I'm sure that she's fine, and I'm very happy that she's fine, because she needed to be free from this physical restraint that she was experiencing here. So I'm okay. I'm happy. I have a great life, and so I've used all those techniques that I've shared with people all these years, and implemented them in my own life. I think what was most profound, though, Barbara, is that when I'm standing in front of hundreds of people, thousands of people, I look into their eyes with a much more clear vision, because I understand their pain now differently than I did prior to her passing. I understand the pain of a man who's lost his mother now, or a woman who's lost her husband. Recently, there was a woman in the audience, and I stood in front of her and I raised my arms up like this, and I did this, and she screamed to the top of her lungs. She said a few days after her daughter passed away, she looked into the sky and there was an angel with its arms like this. That woman made the entire audience cry, because everyone became invested in that one moment with her. So it's amazing to me.
It is. It's like there was a young boy here who you didn't obviously know, and he was a musician, and he had stopped. And I'll never forget, you got up and you were channeling the Father, and you're like, your dad wants you to do this. And like Roland was playing the air guitar, but it was so incredible. And now he's back to his music.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
You touched so many people. How did you know that you were chosen, that you had this incredible ability to communicate?
Well, I did see my grandmother standing in my bedroom 42 years ago. I began to explore that opportunity, but I don't think I am chosen. There is not one book that I've ever read that says Roland Comtois is the channeler. Every book I've ever read, from every religion that I've ever explored, says that everyone has a gift, that every person has an opportunity. This is mine. This happens to be mine. Everyone has a way to communicate, to connect, to create. This is the way I have a conversation.
Well, but it's a very special way, and and lots of my colleagues, we try, and sorry, I feel you're chosen.
Well, what you're seeing is years and years of dedicated service to this process. That's what you're seeing.
But what you hear with people that have this ability, okay, you have this ability. It's like a sense, a sixth sense. It is it's shown to them, like it was with your grandmother. You're presented with it. They come to you.
You can say all you want. I still don't believe that I've been chosen. I think that every person who will view this, has a spark of that energy within them. If I was an athlete and I was a muscle guy, and I worked on this muscle for 42 years, this would be the biggest muscle that anyone had ever seen. I've worked on this my entire life, so it should look like that.
But why? Was it because they came to you when your grandmother died that opened up opened you up to want to do that? Why did you want to exercise this muscle?
Well, because I saw her standing in this beautiful and radiant, magnificent light.
Okay.
And I felt this enormous peace as a 10-year-old kid sitting at the edge of my bed at 11:59 p.m. I saw her there. I was intrigued. I was enraptured by the experience. And then I thought, well, okay, if she's okay, then I need to learn this. So at 10 years old, I began a journey. At 17 years old, I started calling my friends and saying, hey, I got messages tonight. And I would hand out a few messages to the people that I met. And I just continued on this exploration until I had a near-death experience. Then I truly understood that this whole idea of getting a message is what is needed, and I just followed through with that.
Okay, so maybe not chosen, but we all have our soul's journey, and this clearly is what you chose.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, you did. This is your soul's journey. You were a nurse. You're dedicated. This is
Yes.
your passion.
Yes.
So then I'll rephrase it. It's not chosen, but this is your destiny.
It is.
And it's not a lot of other people's destiny. They can sit there and want to talk, but it doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily come through. I just don't want people to feel like, get frustrated.
Well, they do get frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do, because they try so hard and they try to employ these ideas and these concepts and they can't get there. I'm
Right.
telling you, to get there, you have to stop.
And be still.
And be still and be silent and feel the power of that 1 second.
And receive, like you said.
And receive with your heart. You know, there's a whole process, but you can do that. Now, you may not get these purple paper messages that are detailed like this. You might not get every one that looks like this, that tells a different story. What you will get is a moment of feeling incredible. That's what you'll get. And at that moment, you will change. You will then look at the next message beyond tunnel vision and see how powerful it really is.
And that's why people come to you over and over and over, because they want to feel connected and they want to feel that feeling of heart-opening love.
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, I am the fortunate one. I get to live my destiny every time I'm standing in front of a person, because I get to share with them the endless possibilities that love is everlasting, and that right here, right now, something happens.
You have a website that has unbelievable resources that people can access. Your recent book, 16 Minutes,
Yes.
is incredibly inspirational and informative,
Yes.
as well as And Then There Was Heaven, which I really implore people to get both of these books. And I'm just so grateful to know you and to be present while you're working this incredible.
Likewise, and I
work
thank
that
you
do.
for your support.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I feel the angels. He brings them wherever he goes. And please join us in Roland's demonstration to awaken the messenger within, to receive the communication that we so want to receive. See you there.